Добрый день.
Good day, dear speakers. Good day, dear listeners of our panel discussion. We are about to start our panel discussion on cybersecurity and fraud on financial markets. And as of today, cybersecurity is one of the most important aspects of our everyday life. And especially during the pandemic, the cybersecurity showed this particular importance, having unprecedented impact on the lives of many millions of people all around the world, ensuring remote access to informational system, reliability of infrastructure, and protection of personal data. The past year has shown that changes are taking place in all spheres of life, including the financial industry. With the transition to a remote lifestyle, the activity of cyber frauders has increased significantly. The pandemic has not only weakened that growth of financial systems, but also led to a spike in internet fraud, targeted attack, significant increase in phishing attacks and cyber incidents associated with the use of social engineering. Given the dynamic development of Kazakhstan and its role in the world community, the Republic has attracted the attention of high cyber criminals and specialists of authorized services. They track every day various attacks on both the public and private sectors. And in that sense, the financial sphere is particularly interested, and present realities dictate the new trends in confronting modern threats and challenges of cybersecurity in order to maintain law and order, and in order to make sure that there are no global leaks of personal data, and there's a way to fight internet fraud. And at today's session, we together, alongside with regulators and representatives of the financial sector, we will discuss various topics related to cybersecurity, pandemic, and the market situation and how to fight cybercrime. I would like to present you our today's speakers. We have Mr. Ruslan Abdikalikov, who is the chairman of the Informational Security Committee of the Republic of Kazakhstan, Mr. Dauren Moldakhmetov, acting director of Security Division of National Bank of the Republic of Kazakhstan, Roman Perminov, head of Cybersecurity Department Agency of the Republic of Kazakhstan for the Regulation and Development of Financial Markets. We have Mr. Konstantin, who is the Director of Financial Technology and Innovation Association of Financiers of Kazakhstan. And we also have a representative of one of the banks of the Republic of Kazakhstan, Mr. Alexander Ryabov, Director for the Department for Monitoring and Prevention of Fraud in Digital Channels of Alpha Bank. And let's start with the first question to the regulator, to Ruslan Kenjibekovich. What type of the issues you had to face in the field of informational security during a pandemic? And in your opinion, what's the number of cyber attacks in Kazakhstan? The question is whether or not this number increased or decreased, and what are the fields that are particularly prone to those cyber attacks. And thank you very much, Olzhas. Thank you, colleagues, for the opportunity to speak on this event. And in reality, I think we agreed to participate in this event, and us as regulators, when it comes to cybersecurity, we realize to what extent we are needed one to another, and financial markets needs entrepreneurs, and entrepreneurs need financial market. And based on our experience, and during the last year, when we had this pandemic reactions, and I think the governments and our ministries, they received in order to facilitate the remote work of governors. And within a certain period of time, we had launched the system that was based on the solution of Fortinet that comes from abroad. And that system allowed us to access to receive access to informational systems that were in the city of Nur-Sultan, and that way governors received remote access. And this was the first difficulty that we had to face. And in our country, governmental bodies, they function in their closed information network, and they've got the unified environment for governmental bodies. And as one can suppose that governor simply works online, but this has been done intentionally from that point of view. And every governor's had two segments, and every governor has two computers. that way they're able to access the so-called open segment, that is the computer that is linked to internet, and another computer for local work that is designed to work with governmental information systems. And the first difficulty that we had to face, as it turns out, not every single governmental system is done based on the sharp client technology. And as one can imagine, in order to access the information for a thick client, it's hard to provide that access. And second of all, we were very aware of the risks associated with cybersecurity, the risk that we had to accept. And on the one hand, we had at stake the health and lives of governors. However, on the other hand, we had to face cybersecurity risks. And us as entrepreneurs, we had to compromise, and we had to accept certain risks in order to allow governors to work. And if the system based on a sharp client, they are designed in such a way that the information that circles around the closed network, and that information is not supposed to exit, is not supposed to be beyond governmental sector, and that information became accessible on the governor's home computer, and the file the governor works with. And after having finished the session, and that information remained on the user's network, and this is the risk that we had to accept. And in order to avoid this risk in the future, and our ministry is also a regulator when it comes to information sphere, and we are preparing recommendations, and in the near future we will try to transfer all the governmental information systems towards a cloud platforms, and this will allow us to mitigate the risks whereby a governor works remotely, and the governor will not, we would like to have an information whereby the governor would not be able to download certain files that one has access to, and those files will always remain in the cloud, and all the documents and all the files will be stored in the cloud, and there will be no way to download that information. And this, roughly speaking, this is like working with Google Docs. It's as if having a document remotely on Google Docs, but no one would be able to download it. And by the same token, in the future, we expect this is how this system will be designed. And we were very aware of the risks that are associated with using the solution that comes from abroad. And once we had the system that was launched from abroad, a Fortinet system, and us, alongside with our own in-house developers, we were working, and we started our work. And few months later, and the Fortinet was replaced by our in-house developed Certex VPN solution. And this is another risk that we saw, and thanks to the effort of our ministry, thanks to the effort of our developers, that risk was mitigated. And as of now, around about 10,000 governors, they are using this remote workplace solution, and they work in-house developed, locally developed the system. And apart from that, we use multi-factor authentication. And as you know, when it comes to workplace, how can we have the idea whether or not the governor is working, or potentially his brother or his wife could be trying to access those systems? And in order to avoid that, we decided to adopt a multi-factor identification system, and a governor would need to use a e-signature, that is a physical token. And second of all, on this physical token, we've got the mobile phone of the governor that is impossible to change. And whenever we have e-signature recorded on the token, we've also link automatically the cell phone number, and the notification is sent to the governor, and there is a way to a governor to confirm that it's indeed him or her trying to access the workplace. And after that, we use two-factor authentication, and this number of steps, this allows us to avoid and to mitigate certain risks, and we suppose that this will indeed allow us, this did indeed allow us to save lives and the health of our governors. So this is briefly the experience that I wanted to share and the problems we had to face. Thank you for the response. We see that the pandemic, it did reveal certain problems. However, the pandemic did also accelerate certain processes that otherwise would take a longer time. Let's talk to our colleague, Mr. Konstantin Eduardovich.
What kind of work with the financial market is being carried out in the field of IT and information security? And in your opinion, what are the information security lessons learned by the financial market during the pandemic? Here, I would actually agree with you. First of all, any difficulties are at the same time are opportunities. So actually, we've been in the pandemic for more than a year even, and during this time, luckily, we've received a lot of information services than we would have otherwise in a normal market situation. For years before this, we've been talking about needing access to biometrics and government databases, and turns out, if necessary, this can be done within 2 months. So this is something that we've gained now. And the other thing is realizing that Kazakhstan is one of the leading digital markets. A lot of even developed countries are looking to us for various examples. And for example, we talked about Kaspi Bank and digital loans for housing. This is something new. But we have to understand that cybersecurity also plays a big part in this. So here we are kind of at the very bleeding edge, and we don't always have some sort of world experience that we can use, that we can look at. So what we're doing now is we're always discovering something new. Colleagues and I were actually just discussing the innovations and how do we keep living with them. And I think this situation we will be in for a long time, where we'll be always evaluating new mechanisms, taking whatever's good and getting rid of whatever's not working. But in general, I think our situation is quite healthy, especially taking in mind how fast the market is developing. There are many new players, strong players emerging every day. Thank you for your answer. Let's ask a bank representative. Alexander Sergeyevich, could you tell us about the risks of social engineering in second-tier banks, and how can we decrease the risks? Dear colleagues, thank you for giving me this opportunity to speak. I would like to start with actually a specific example. In Alpha Bank, we implemented an anti-fraud system to prevent fraud. And then one day, there was an incident that we recorded with one of our clients and their one operation. And further on, Alpha Bank employees were working through this incident with the client, contacting the client, and trying to find out the reasons and how this transfer had happened. The client was saying that, yes, that was the client doing this, no one's interfering with them, it's them, but taking into account the predictors that the system gave us, and the conversation with the client was showing us the opposite of that. We paused this transaction, and for a long time, this is for like a whole day, the client was trying to go into the bank and to explain, to say that it's the client performing the transaction and not them, but all the other factors were saying otherwise. So we very clearly managed to identify a fraudulent activity, and taking into account all of our efforts, even taking into mind that we are in contact with the client, and the client seemingly wants to do this transaction, but we kind of had to confront the client and not let them do something that they want to do. But nonetheless, our efforts were shown to be practical. the next day, the client came back to the bank and stated that, yes, the client was under duress by fraudulent activity, and this shows us that social engineering is already is part of our life as well. And so actually it so happens that it will continue developing and growing. Why I think this? So something very simple. 3 years ago, when I just started doing this, in our bank, we didn't have even a single case of social engineering. But nowadays, I can state with confidence that we've been having these kind of cases every hour, even every minute. Fraudulent activity is increasing, and it's, I think I would even say that they are even evolving. Because of geographical reasons, it took time, and because of language barriers for them to reach our markets. But now they are here, and so there's a lot of risk related to that. As for the fight with fraud, I would say that there are three main paths in fighting fraud that we are working with. The first one is we are target at popularization of the methods of fighting fraudulent activity. So it's some sort of prophylactics, popularizing the schemes so that they can be recognized by their clients. This technology needs to be implemented into the population on a large scale, because there is a very clear correlation. Because especially if it's some sort of a city that's very far, where people are more trusting, and social engineering tells us that the more trusting a person is, the more they are at risk for this kind of fraudulent activity. The second thing, I think personally, but also I see in practice, we need to be united. The banks need to be united with regulators, with telecom operators, together to fight fraudulent activity. There needs to be a platform where we could exchange our best practices, as well as to have mutual feeds monitoring fraudulent activity. Another important moment that's native to all of this is I think that we need some sort of regulatory support. I think we cannot do without it anymore. In my opinion, the role of social engineering in general, this has become a part of our life, and there are huge risks associated with it. So I think this is kind of a number one threat nowadays. Thank you very much for your answer. As we can see, we probably will never get rid of social engineering, because social engineering related attacks we've had since day one, since the internet has been created, and even then we had a social engineering type of attacks. Ruslan Kenjibekovich, the next question is also to you. This spring there was this case in the USA when largest pipeline of the United States, Colonial Pipeline, was targeted, and in the end the company paid cyber criminals $5 million in cryptocurrency. In this regard, there's a question: what measures should be taken by domestic companies to exclude such attacks and blackmail? And could you please also comment on the effectiveness of control procedures in the field of personal data protection to prevent information leakage or information loss? Thank you very much for your question, Olzhas. Yes, we are monitoring these sorts of cases with a lot of attention, and thank God that we have an opportunity to learn on other people's mistakes at current time instead of making our own mistakes. In this regard, a lot has been done in our country on a legal level in terms of organization. As you know, in 2017, by the decree of our president, first president, a program was created in our country called CyberFit in Kazakhstan. And this program didn't include just program and software solutions, but also a complex of legal initiatives as well. And one of these legal initiatives was creating or rather implementing a cyber insurance, a term of cyber insurance. This is when a person can insure the risks that are related as part of what they do as their work. In addition to that, a professional community was created. A professional community that has to do with information security, that on a professional level was taking care of information security. As you know, in our country, we have operative centers of information safety. This is a licensed activity. They are licensed. They can be said to be analogous to security operations centers in Western countries. So the creation of these teams should allow for our market, for our businesses, to protect themselves on a professional level. In addition, in our country, we have four different organizations that will react to fraudulent computer activity. These are the kind of organizations that are always ready to help. For example, and one of these organizations is government-based. It's also the first one. It's located. It's called KZ and it has a hotline with the number 1414. And so any person, a private or juridical person, can call this hotline and get a consultation. Actually, the logic of protection is part of our legal of information technology. The logic is simple. Every subject of digitalization has to protect their own digital processes that they have, protect the information. So the government does help them with various legal framework, organizational and technical help, so that this person can follow the word of the law and protect themselves as they're supposed to. That's the answer to the first question. As the second part of the question, as you know, this year the president has agreed to update the personal data protection laws in our country. Since February this year, we've been working actively with this professional team, with active members of the community, with citizens, with businesses, even with government organs. As it turns out, this is not simple as it might seem at first. Protection of personal data seems to be a clear concept to all of us, and everyone has the same approach to it. But as it turns out, this is quite a complicated question, because actually every participant of this process understands it in their own way, and they are okay with some aspects of it while they're not with the other aspects. First of all, we have the government body, we have citizens, we have businesses, we have community members. And actually, we spent a long time trying to find the approach that would make everyone, every stakeholder happy. And right now we have a number of legal updates that are being prepared to be implemented, to be presented to the parliament, and we'll try to accept them by the end of this year as part of our law. So we would also like to say that actually only in June last year, Kazakhstan has seen a regulator appear for the first time in our country, a regulator of data security. And our ministry is such a regulator, and during this period of time, we think a lot of work has been done by this body. So since the beginning of this year, we've conducted eight checks.
We had to punish certain entrepreneurs. We had to put sanctions against certain governmental bodies. We had 11 cases since we started performing those checks. and our legislation allows to put certain sanctions. And as you know, we had a major event that was titled Digital Bridge that was organized by the ministry, where the president of the country ordered to strengthen and to reinforce the responsibility to make sure that whoever violates privacy of someone's data assumes all the legal responsibility. And this is what we try to implement when working with the Ministry of Information, when working with governmental bodies, and working with public sector. And we had a wide range of problems, and we can understand why it gets a particular attention from the states. And if we were to start this from the year 2017, when the program started, and at a professional level, we started working on this protection of personal data since the last year. Thank you for the answer. Mr. Ruslan Kinjibekovich spoke how everything is happening in the state control sector. Let's talk about financial sector. Let's talk about national bank. And Dauren Nurlanovich, we know that in the national banks there is a project on reacting to cyber incidents in the financial sector. Tell us at what stage the project is and what is done in that sense. And could you please comment the interaction with the Kainar agency, how this interaction unfolds? And thank you for the question. Well, first of all, I would like to thank colleagues for the participating in the first discussion when we talk about how we can combat cybercrime, and I think this is the first panel discussion, and I think the next day we also had the opportunity to discuss relevant issues. And as for National Bank, we received an order to implement the unified platform for reacting to cybercrimes in financial sector. We had to finalize this work before July 2021, and we have developed a concept which identifies this platform, and we've got 4 main directions: monitoring and detecting cyber threats. Second part is prophylaxis. Third section is reacting towards cyber threats, and the fourth part is raising the overall awareness. And the question is how we can reach the potential when exchanging the data. And as of today, we are continuing the work on finalizing the features of the platform, and for each direction we hope to implement the new client that would react to cyber threats. And as a preliminary result, we can include the preliminary measures for cyber threats DLR. We've got the network sandbox, and we are in the process of developing and going to the route towards automation. We've got the SUAR solution, and we are interested in gathering the data. We're interested in data gathering automation, and this is what we have been discussing with our colleagues, and we are in the process of continuing this work, and this is as part of a preliminary results. And I would like to highlight the fact that we also have the successful solution that is called MIS, and in order to interact with financial sector, that platform is used, and we managed to connect 42 organizations, and we have detected more than 300 weak points, and this not only towards National Bank, but in general towards other interested stakeholders. We are open to cooperate, and as part of our cooperation cases, we can point out that we did sign memorandum of understanding with governmental and local companies, and we agreed to perform instrumental audit and to estimate to what extent the organization is protected from cybersecurity point of view, and we are able to detect the security and the vulnerability towards potential cyber threats. And overall, the idea is to improve the cybersecurity in financial sector overall. And I must highlight the fact that as part of our project based on the platform of National Bank, we plan to create a specialized teams that would be interacting, and the main activity would be directed at prophylaxis and preventing potential cyber threats. And when it comes to interaction of unified techno platforms of ASOI and Kainar agency, we have already implemented, and we've got the solution, integrated solution, and we would like to make sure that we're able to change our indicators, and that we're able to combat certain threats such as backdoor, spam, phishing, or DOS attacks. And if there is a way, if someone is performing some remote access towards the design, which way the informational system was designed, we are in the process of preventing those threats, and we are interacting with other governmental bodies, and we work on various informational security projects. Thank you for this detailed answer. We heard what types of work is performed by national banks, and then we've got a question towards agency. Please, Mr. Roman Viktorovich, if you could talk about the measures to protect against cyber attacks or cyber threats on financial market, and what could you announce on behalf of Kainar platform? Olzhas, thank you for giving me an opportunity to speak. Well, first of all, I would like to congratulate all the colleagues for the forthcoming holiday, and we are about to celebrate the 30th year of our independence, and it's been a while since we had a similar congress. Last time, what Dauren Nurlanovich pointed out, I think this is the first time where we pay where we put such an emphasis on the cybersecurity issues, and we discuss this issue as part of our panel discussion, and especially when related to the financial sector. And I'm very happy that I have this opportunity to exchange my experience and to show the results of my work as per cybersecurity with my colleagues, and what type of work the agency performs and what type of tasks do we have. Well, as a regulator, our main goal is to create the environment that would be stable, and that would be stable towards potential cyber threats. And when it comes to our measures, we impose regulatory requirements for financial organizations, and we got to make sure that there is a way, that there is an interaction when it comes to exchanging information, and so the all people who work in this sector, they're able to exchange information, and we got to make sure that people exchange information, and we are not particularly doing a work for one particular bank. We are working for all the sector, and in order to do that at a legislation level, we created the Center of Cybersecurity, and this is how defined by law. We are agency, we are the Center of Cybersecurity, and while we were functioning, I think it all started at the beginning of 2020, where we had to create an agency as per order of the president, and we did a complex work on creating a legislation base. We had to determine how the entire sector works, and how the market participants would work as per cybersecurity issues, not only banks, but also insurance organization, credit agency, microfinance agency, and we managed to create legislation norms, and we had the defined risks, cybersecurity risks. And when it comes to our personnel, when it comes to our level of awareness, that our main goal is to gather and evaluate the data on potential cybersecurity threats. We gather the data on vulnerability of the system, and we also gather the data on the way the information systems are designed. And the main idea is to prevent such risks, that allows us to determine and to minimize the risks should we have a certain threats. And when it comes to our system, the so-called ASOI Kainar system, this is informational processing platform, and Kainar, that means the source. So that means we are the source of information, and we are the source, and we are eager to share this information with all. And our system is designed to exchange this information with the rest. And the idea is that I must highlight the fact that we are using our own resources without receiving any help from other organization. We developed this system, and this system was functioning since the year 2021. So far, it is functioning in the pilot mode. And at the same time, we already implemented and we put the system into practice. And I will talk about that later, what type of results we already achieved. And as of now, we can state that all the banks, in fact, 22 banks are already connected to that system, and banks receive notifications on potential threats. And banks also have the ability to upload the information and to upload signals and to inform the rest what is happening. And there is a way to perform all this automatically, and there's a way to do that manually. So there are many ways of interacting with our system. Our system is very flexible, and depending on the level to what extent the information system is developed at a certain organization, any organization can interact with our system. And I wanted to state that as per 11th of November, we have already had more than 31,000 events as per cybersecurity. And we've got more than 25,000 cyber attacked, and we've got more than 4,000 of abnormal activity. And we have also 34 crashes and 34 that's the classification that we were observing, and this classification changing and is always evolving depending on the conditions in which banks have to work, and we might see potential changes in the future. And thanks to the Kainar system, and we were able to provide all the banks since the time the system started working. We already sent 95 notifications and 278 notifications on potential vulnerabilities. And we also work with incident with cards, and we have already processed 56 cards. And before that, we used to take everything manually, and the system allows us to minimize operational expenses of the banks and all the organizations that are connected towards our system, because the main idea of our system is to automate all the processes. So this is briefly what I wanted to share with you. Yeah, thank you, Roman, for such an answer.
The next question is actually to our only, at the moment, representative of a second-tier bank, Alexander. What do you think of the possibility of organizing interaction between banks, telecom operators, and other participants in terms of exchange of information about on feeds, on internet fraud, and other information through technological platforms of regulators? And so that we can answer every question, let's say you have 3 or 4 minutes to answer. Alexander? Well, taking into account that in my first answer, I partially answered this question. First of all, I think that this kind of a platform is quite necessary. I will just repeat that a single person is not a warrior in the field. It's not an army. So our experience and the experience of our neighbors is showing that no one can resolve this issue by themselves. So we need various tools that we can use to exchange information on various fraudulent tools that are used, so that we can fight them or prevent certain, for example, fraudulent transactions and fight fraudulent activity. Dauren Nurlanovich, a question to you. Could you tell us about the steps taken to ensure cybersecurity of the payment market, and what measures are being implemented by the National Bank to combat fraud? Thank you for this very relevant question. Yes, taking into account the cyber attacks scope and other fraudulent activity in data security, it's important to prevent fraudulent and to strengthen information safety. Because of this, regulators have performed work on increasing the demands to regulate payment systems and created a legal project. This legal project has certain demands to payment systems, and there's a certain number of measures to ensure information security. Currently, the project is being implemented into all stakeholders. We also have to mention that during the pandemic, there have been more factors that have to do with fraudulent transactions. and where we all understand that any fraudulent activity starts with data leaking of personal data in the banks, and social engineering also uses this kind of method. So before a fraudulent activity through social engineering can happen, their information is first leaked somehow and that what leads to social engineering. We're also trying to implement anti-fraud platforms. This is the next stage. Right now, we're working on collecting offers from the financial market, and together with second-tier banks, we're testing a platform that will later on include other players in the market. Because we have the Alpha Bank's experience. Actually, we had our first anti-fraud forum in Kazakhstan, and a second-tier bank, Alpha Bank, gathered us all together. We understand the problem, and we're working on resolving it together. We need a system to be able to share fraud risk indicators very fast. At the same time, we have to say we always have to be ready to react quickly, and only working together will be able to fight fraudulent activity. Thank you. Thank you. Well, in that case, let's ask the next question to Alpha Bank. Alexander, what, in your opinion, additional regulatory legal framework from regulators should be formed in terms of online monitoring of payment transactions of second-tier banks? What do you think? Thank you for your question. Well, I don't even have to think here. I would say that I already have an opinion on this. And as my colleagues have said, we have already been planning a forum. We actually conducted this forum. We've had it, and the goal was to discuss the cooperation between banks on this subject. And there is an opinion that we need several steps in order to realize this anti-fraud unified platform to fight cyber fraud. First of all, we need some sort of, regulatory framework directed at the participants in the market, so that they have certain procedures in place and they have to be regulated. There have to be certain rules in place. Another quite important aspect, the second step, is this unified platform that we talked about. And of course, we need regulation in here as well. There have to be certain rules where everyone will have, first of all, the same ways and they have the same rights in sharing and using the information. And as our experience from the Russian Federation shows, because we've consulted them on this, it's also quite important in these rules for the feed to be able to add information, but also to be able to remove information when necessary, because our colleagues have shared that this might be necessary. So to sum it up, I would say that all of these procedures, first of all, they have to have a legal basis, and then having this concept, this unified idea, we can take steps to prevent cyber fraud. Thank you. Thank you for your answer. Let's go to the next question. The Association of Financiers of Kazakhstan unites 128 participants in the financial market. Konstantin, what work in the field of cybersecurity is being carried out by your organization? That's the first question. Second, in your opinion, how can financial market participants be stimulated to exchange information on IOC indicators as part of the implementation of technology platforms for regulators? Thank you very much. Well, first of all, the association is an organ that is trying to help in the collaboration between stakeholders of the market and the market. And I would say we have a very competent team in the agency. The work has been very fruitful. We're issuing documents regularly that have to do with the platform, with the work. So the work is being done. Of course, there are also part of the situation is not great as well. I couldn't say that everything is great, because if you see, we only have one market representative here, and all the others are regulators. And what we could have here is the national security and so on. So what worries me is when the same industry sphere is being regulated by 4 different regulators, there will always be some sort of disagreements between these regulators, and we see this often. We see that sometimes regulators start competing with each other, which is even worse. And so what the association does is it's trying to make the work more effective. As for stimulating market participants, our market participant here says they are for it, but of course any sharing of information, first of all, requires trust. And there's only one way that a government body will be trusted is if they're reliable in their work. So I would say we just need to continue what we're doing and be reliable. Thank you very much for your answer. Actually, we have a question to the agency. Please, Roman, could you tell us how does the fight against cybercrime has been established in your cooperation, and is there an interaction between public and private structures of the financial sector? Thank you for the question, Olzhas. I would also like to thank Konstantin, of course, for praising our organization. That's very nice to hear. And my colleagues here will not let me lie if I say that our agency has been trying to be open and working with all the stakeholders, with private persons. But the main thing we do is we ensure clear cooperation and openness, and we're trying to solve all the issues of cybersecurity on our platform, because we have a lot of professional specialists who understand each other very well and are very efficient in resolving issues together. That's one of the mechanisms of our cooperation. Of course, I agree with Konstantin that that when we have several regulators taking care of the same question, and whereas we as an agency are trying to be an intermediary between the market and national regulators, we're trying to resolve the issues that are there, so that there's an understanding of understanding each other's borders and who owns what. We're also working with the National Bank on information security, I would say, because they are also one of the main regulators in terms of payment systems. Actually, I would say our Kainar information processing platform is a big part of this. We've provided an API so that the indicators on information security can be checked, and we will start implementing and developing this platform to have a unified platform. We also have a good communication with the Committee for Information Security and the Committee on National Security as the main regulators of security for our government. We're also working with the government technical security organization, and we have an agreement on sharing information with them as well. Together we prevent cyber attacks, so whenever there are any critical situations in the market, we work very well with these organizations so that we can resolve issues very efficiently. As for international cooperation, of course, we also work with regulators from other countries. We have agreements with Central Bank of Russia and Armenia and Kyrgyzstan to exchange information, with Belarus, of course. And the agency also is a participant of FIRST since 2020, which also gives us a lot of advantages.
And overall, if I were to talk about interaction, the point of our work when it comes to providing cybersecurity, it all comes down to provide cybersecurity by interaction. Without interaction, it would be pointless to talk about cybersecurity, because one cannot fight all the threats. I think we must work together with our colleagues, and we're always open and we're always eager to cooperate. Thank you for your answer. And towards the end of our session, let's go back to Mr. Ruslan Kenjibekovich. What measures, in your opinion, should be taken in the financial market to improve Kazakhstan's position in the global cybersecurity index, and how will the process of introduction of technological platforms of regulator affect the country's cybersecurity index? Thank you for this question. I think, as it was pointed out already, those subjects, those organizations of the market that work with all types of information, they are very prone to regulations from any regulatory bodies. In reality, I think the country's main goal is not to over-regulate. I think country's main goal is to help this market to develop properly and at the same time to protect the citizens. And therefore, when it comes to our committee, we are focusing on the regulator function as far as regulations is concerned, as far as automation is concerned, and as far as protecting personal data and all the issues that relate to e-documents. And important function that was mentioned today already is the telecommunication regulations. And this is an important aspect. This is where we need to strengthen the interaction with our colleagues, because when it comes to our network operators, every big player, they have their own anti-fraud system, and the idea of the state is to make those systems integrated so that they comply with certain logic. And the most important thing that these systems transfer that information towards anti-fraud system that would be associated with financial institutions. And I suppose that the joint work that we're working together with the state and with the market, this work should help the market to develop properly, to generate profits, which is the most important task of entrepreneurs. And the government's goal is to defend their interests and interest of the citizens. And we have mentioned it several times. We are moving towards the same direction. And the idea is to show the world that our country is developing towards providing a cybersecurity to all. And as you know, there is a global cybersecurity index by United Nations, and how this is being figured out. The International Union of Electrical Communication is determining this index. When it all started, at the beginning, I think we occupied the place number 102, and last year, I think we reached the 31st spot worldwide. So we have this ambitious tasks. We want to be in top 30, and at some point we would like to enter top 10. And I think this is a realistic goal for Kazakhstan, because we are not a big state, we are a very unified state, and we can achieve that. And these discussions that we have, I think it shows that there are no contradictions, and I think it all comes down to developing a professional competence as far as cybersecurity is concerned. It's all about raising citizens' awareness, because not only does it help us, people who work for information security, it also potentially helps to financial institutions. And if the person is well aware of various cybersecurity threats, of various cyber frauds, and that means the possibility of becoming a victim of frauders would be very low. And in reality, I think that we have a big work ahead of us, and the most important thing that within these years we learn to hear one another. And the so-called patiently listening state, insofar as cybersecurity goes, already existed, and I think financial institutions have no issues when working with their regulator, and I think we should join our efforts, because when it comes to protecting personal data, those issues are very relevant, and providing cybersecurity is also relevant, and both regulators should work and interact tightly and inform us correctly. And the market should also be aware that country's task is not to overcomplicate life, is in reality that the government should strive to increase the competitiveness level of the market at the international market, and without interacting with the regulator, it would be impossible to achieve. We should move together. This is our strength, and we shall see the result. And as I said before, there are no contradictions among us, and I think we will be developing ourselves and will benefit all. And thank you for your answer. I think, yeah, it's important, the fact that we've got the interaction between regulator and informational security people, and there is an interaction with financial sector, and we need to defy cyber threats, and banks and regulators. Everyone needs to be at the same page. And would anyone like to add something towards the end of our panel session? And as I said before, and as my colleague pointed out, and when on this forum, when we were discussing the cybersecurity issues, in fact, this is one of the most sensible topics for financial sector. And I think cyber frauders, they have larger budgets than cybersecurity departments of some banks, because we're not talking about one or two random hackers. I think those are the professional criminals that they can be numerous. They can be more than 100 very well organized criminals. And in case we lack cybersecurity, and as Mr. Dauren pointed out, maybe business automation will partially improve the situation, such as the employee turnover or some issues related to SUAR system. As Ruslan Kendibekovich said, we made a big breakthrough when it comes to worldwide cybersecurity index, and within 5 years, I think we improved our ranking. And now there is a need to improve the technical aspect, and the main topic that was mentioned by every single speaker, and the most important topic, is to how we interact with another. Because if we are not unified, it will be very hard to cope with cybersecurity threats, and it will be very hard to cope with cyber criminals. And I thank all the speakers, and I would like to congratulate you with the forthcoming holiday.